You've probably heard the term juvenile delinquency, but it's one of those things that looks completely different depending on where you are in the world. It's this universal story for sure, but the plot changes in every single country. So let's dig in and see what the data actually tells us about youth crime on a global scale. And just to show you how serious this can get, let's go back to the 1990s in Japan. There was this huge surge in youth violence, and one of the most shocking things to come out of it was something the gangs called uncle hunting. I mean, it was exactly what it sounds like. Groups of kids would target and brutally beat up lone businessmen, a lot of the time just for the thrill. It's a pretty stark reminder we're not just talking about minor mischief here. And what happened in Japan? Well, that was hardly a one-off. We see this pattern of youth violence all over the globe, just with its own local flavor. You had the skinhead violence in Germany right after reunification, which was really fueled by all this unemployment and social chaos. Or think about Mexico, where kids, teenagers have been hired by drug cartels as hitmen. It's a global problem, no doubt, but the causes and the consequences are intensely local. So that brings up a huge question. If you've got a 15-year-old in Mexico involved with a cartel and a 15-year-old in Germany in a skinhead group, how on earth can anyone, researchers, governments, get a clear picture of what's going on and actually compare these things? And this right here is the biggest challenge when you try to study delinquency across different countries. It honestly feels like you're trying to compare apples and oranges, because the legal systems, the way things are defined, the way data is collected, it's also different. Okay, so let's break down the three biggest hurdles researchers face. First off, what one country legally calls a crime might be totally different in the country next door. Second, how do you even measure it? Are you counting arrests, like they tend to do in the US, or are you counting cases that the police have actually solved, which is more common in Europe? And third, what even is a juvenile? In one place, it's anyone under 18. Somewhere else, it might be under 20. It's a real mess. It sounds almost impossible to get a clear picture, right? But here's the cool part. Even with all these massive hurdles, researchers have managed to stitch the data together. And when they do, some really surprising and incredibly important stories start to pop out. All right, let's get into it because this is where things get really fascinating. We're going to look at what the research actually shows about youth crime trends, especially when you put Europe and the United States side by side. So here is the big twist. Starting around the mid-1990s, the US saw a massive, steep drop in juvenile violence. But at the exact same time, many European countries were seeing the complete opposite. Their rates were going up. Now, this totally flips a lot of common assumptions on their head, and it's a puzzle that people are still trying to figure out today. And get ready for this, because this data really challenges what you might think. This table shows the slice of homicides that involved a juvenile around 2010 to 2014. Look at Italy. It's shocking. Nearly a third of all homicides there had a juvenile involved, and this is in a country with a really low overall homicide rate. Meanwhile, the US at 6.7% is actually lower on this specific measurement than several major European countries. And the trends aren't the same for every kind of behavior. When you look at substance use, the script totally flips. So students in the US report using illicit drugs more over their lifetime, but students in Europe, they are way more likely to have used alcohol and cigarettes. I mean, in some countries, alcohol use is up to 96%. It just goes to show you that delinquency isn't just one thing. So if the problems look so different, violence is going up in one place, drug use patterns are totally different somewhere else, how in the world do different societies build their justice systems to deal with all these challenges? Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts of how countries actually put together their response. And we're going to use England as our main example here, mostly because it shares a legal history with the US, which makes for a really interesting comparison. So this shows you the very structured path a young person in England might go down. After they're apprehended, look at the key steps. There's a specific bail hearing, there's a formal step for diversion, where police can issue a caution to keep a kid out of court, and then a national prosecution service has to decide to move forward before it even gets to a special youth court. It's a very deliberate, step-by-step process. So here's the absolute crucial point, especially for smaller stuff. How do they handle minor offenses? In England, there's a formal official system of police cautions and reprimands designed to push kids away from the court system. In the US, that same decision often just comes down to the individual police officer's discretion, right there on the spot. It's a huge difference in both philosophy and how things work in practice. And kind of guiding this whole global conversation are principles like this one from the United Nations. These are called the Beijing Rules, and they basically say that locking up a young person should always, always be the absolute last resort. And if you have to do it, it should be for the shortest time possible. This is the ideal, the North Star, that justice systems everywhere are supposed to be aiming for. So, with all these different problems and all these different systems, where are we headed? What are the big ideas that are going to shape the future of youth justice all over the world? Well, the research points to three big ideas for the path forward. First, more visibility. We need to make these super complex systems more open and accountable. Second, the focus really needs to be on the community, because that's where delinquency often starts, but it's also where the best prevention happens. And finally, we've got to get better at anticipating trends, using solid research to get ahead of problems instead of just reacting to them all the time. Which brings us to this one final, really critical question. When you sit back and look at the whole picture, the shocking violence, the different systems, the global trends, it all comes down to a fundamental balancing act. Globally, are we getting it right? Are we striking that delicate balance between punishment on one hand and prevention on the other? The data shows we've still got a long, long way to go.